Well, thank you very much. Fascinating project. Unfortunately, Ali has had to go, so we can't hear more about the Women's Park in Iran. But I think what each of you have done is to highlight how architectural thinking can actually try to address really horrific issues of deprivation, of violence, of Surabaya, exploitation of women, and to try and come up with some way of looking forward, not looking back, recognizing the awfulness of what was done. I mean, I guess the life for the women at Surabaya was pretty awful, actually. And obviously for people in Gaza, it's ghastly at the moment. So, but actually saying there could be a future. There could be a future where your land, your space, the space around you could be made quite attractive and quite beautiful and productive, which I think is a very interesting point you picked up from history, Islam, that it is an agricultural area. It has a long history of agriculture. And in Surabaya, that you don't have to, sleep with someone for money to survive. You can actually do something else. You can be trained in a skill, or you can do something. And presumably there are ways of looking after children and other things, other, as it were, family stability initiatives. But I suppose the question that's begged here, Monique particularly, is, are you thinking purely at an analytical level, or what are you proposing in terms of physical interventions?
Yeah, I think the physical interventions that we've created, so first there is an urban design guidelines based on the community engagement, and we've discussed with the government as well, the local government, and mapping on the assets. So that becomes the urban design guidelines, which is very gender, with the gender strategy as well as part of it. And that becomes the mayoral decree. So the urban design guidelines is for the 24 hectares under the mayoral decree. And then on top of that, we were actually thinking, how do we prove to the community something that could actually happen? So we picked 2 pilot projects as a way that we can engage with them. We can already start creating something for them, and they can already start feeling the benefit. And it's a way for us to monitor as well how they use the space, how it can actually help them, like how it could be like a safe street, like there's like a transport strategy, and how we can create the pilot project of the transport strategy within that. So there's a lot of these physical implementations that was created throughout the process. But we act small, think big, but we act small.
And I mean, I have to say, I suspect that quite a lot of Western cities could do with something like that, a transport strategy that recognizes the need for women. I mean, there's been a lot of issue about harassment on public transport, for example, recently. And Islam, I think the point you made is that you use what's there. Even if it's a ruined building, if it's still got some structural strength, you can find a way of using that. So there is some architecture there that you're enhancing.
Thank you for the. I think one of the things which is really behind all efforts that we're trying really to do that. I was really sad to do this effort, and the war is still ongoing and still continuous. But I think as part from the overall dream that I have, that it will stop one day. So if it stopped, we don't want to stuck with the solution. So I think we have to be prepared. And as I said, it's like a moral obligation that for us as architects, at least if we didn't help physically, at least we can help by at least giving some ideas. So back to your question, the really using what is available and now, which is the rebels and the culture of doing agriculture. So this is the 2 things together to be combined. And I call it like a collective healing process. Like, as you mentioned, it's a productive process, which is a symbol of hope, a symbol of resistance, and also it's an act of resilience. So,
I think that's really interesting, and I think because part of the point in both these cases is about giving some pride and confidence to the people who are there, because it must have been really knocked out of them in Gaza and you know, just being exploited in the way the women were exploited in Somalia. And I know that from work I've done in South Africa, for example, where there are some similarities in the sense that the apartheid government in the 1980s just destroyed residential areas if they didn't like the people who lived there. And the part of that led to a culture where any form of resistance was good. And now that the constitution in South Africa has changed, it's very difficult to say to people who could only survive by pimping and prostitution or by drug smuggling or something like that, that no, that's illegal, but you have the full rights as a citizen now. And I think but giving people pride in their community and in the history of it, in the culture of it, is such an important thing, because then even the oppressors begin to realize that these people are human beings and they deserve respect.
Yeah, I think maybe just to add to that, I think this sense of ownership is very important for these regeneration projects, because not until that we have that you can actually move far.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right, because if you don't have that sort of ownership, that sort of sense of belonging even, it's very difficult to root any sort of social network, any sort of economic network. And if you can give people that, at least they've got something to work with. It's like when Berlin was destroyed at the end of the Second World War, there were some people who traced the recovery of the German economy to the so-called Trümmerfrauen, who are the women who went through the rubble trying to find things, because they had no other way of getting anything. They had to go through the rubbish to try to find things they could sell to survive. And of course, in those conditions, if you read any account of the fall of Berlin in 1945, the conditions for women were as bad as they were in Somalia. You know, it wasn't just the Russians who were up to it; it was everyone. So it was, you know, that sort of sense of an economic grounding, however slight it is, can be a start for something much better. Yeah. So,
and actually, I want to mention that the people already doing this without any advice from the architects, or they don't need us actually. We need them. We're learning from them how to have dignity and live with this kind of resilience. So
yeah, and it is extraordinary how human dignity can come out in the most terrible circumstances. And you know, there are lots of accounts of that, I'm sure, in Gaza as well, but in other areas of violence and repression. So, well, thank you very much for that. And I'm afraid we have to come to close, but a fascinating project, and congratulations to both of you and your teams in working on such important subjects.
Thank you so much. Thank you.